In this episode we will look at the Green Party. The Green Party is a minor party in the UK, but it has made some progress in the last few years. In 2010, the Green Party gained its first MP in the form of the now leader, Caroline Lucas, in the Brighton Pavilion constituency, and they increased their majority in 2015. Brighton Pavilion is now considered to be a safe seat for the Green Party, but it is their only seat. So my question is there any chance the Green Party can get a second seat? This is the question we will address in episode 1 of Poll Prediction. To answer this question, let us look at the target seats of the Green Party. These are the seats that would require the smallest swing from 2015 for the Greens to achieve their majority. As you can see from the diagram, there is one seat that stands out, that is Bristol West. I would consider Bristol West, in light of this, to be the most likely seat that the Greens can achieve. Norwich South is a possibility, but we will be concentrating on Bristol West as the most viable possibility for a second seat in the Green Party. Consider Bristol West in some detail. We can see here the votes from 2015. Now we might expect some of these votes to go from Greens to Labour, because intuitively there is some fear of a Conservative majority overall. So some Green voters might opt to vote Labour because it's seen as the safer option to prevent the Conservatives from getting in. This is despite the Conservatives being in a distant fourth place. Another factor is Jeremy Corbyn appropriating some of the Green Party policy, notably the Labour Party being much more left-wing than it used to be. So Green voters might be inclined to vote Labour, since Labour fulfills many of the roles now that the Green Party did in 2015. Also, we might expect some of these Green voters to vote Liberal Democrat, because Liberal Democrat has this consistent anti-Brexit position that many Green voters will like. On the other hand, we wouldn't expect that many Labour voters to move towards the Conservatives, because Bristol West is demographically a very sort of liberal, young type seat, so we wouldn't expect major flows away from the Labour Party. So this actually is not looking too good for the Green Party. There are intuitively a lot of reasons why Green voters might vote Labour, but there are other things to take into account. Talking about the local effects, just because intuitively one might think the factors are against the Green Party doesn't mean they cannot do well in individual seats, and I will explain 3 very important factors that could actually, despite all this, cause the Green Party to win in Bristol West. Now, the first one is ideology. Now, there are 3 key policy areas that people in Bristol West will care about, and I'm basing this assertion on the demographics of the region. The first is education, namely no tuition fees. Secondly is the policies on the NHS, and thirdly is their attitude towards Brexit. Now you can see that the Green Party represents the intersection of the 3 areas that would be considered most desirable to the young student type demographic of Bristol West. So while the Liberal Democrats wants to stop Brexit and probably will increase NHS spending, it doesn't really have a position on tuition fees that would be considered desirable. The Lib Dems don't want to abolish tuition fees. Now the Labour Party do want to abolish tuition fees, but they also want the UK to leave the single market. So the Green Party has both of those desirable positions. It wants to stop Brexit, it wants greater NHS spending, and it wants to abolish tuition fees. And these are the 3 policy areas that young people seem to care about the most, and based on the demographics of Bristol being a very liberal, student-based seat, it's down to reason that people will be inclined to vote for the Green Party because of its policies in this way. The second reason is to do with the Green campaign itself. Now, we have to understand that back in 2015, Bristol West was not the number 1 target seat. That was actually Norwich South. The Green Party assumed that Norwich South would probably have a better chance of gaining a seat than Bristol West because it had a higher vote proportion in 2015, but that's not the case now. Norwich South is likely to be number 2, after the number one target, which is Bristol West. So I would expect a more favourable allocation of resources towards the Bristol West seat, which would in turn mean that I think the Green Party are more likely to take this seat. Secondly, the Brighton Pavilion seat back in 2015 would have been considered semi-marginal, because in 2010 it was won with a relatively small majority. So the Greens would have campaigned quite hard in Brighton Pavilion to ensure that they kept their one MP of Caroline Lucas. But now the Green Party seat in Brighton Pavilion is a safe seat. It has a majority of more than 10%. So it's likely that the allocation of resources won't be disproportionately towards the Brighton Pavilion seat anymore, and the Greens will be targeting everything they have at Bristol West. To sum up this argument, I'm basically saying that the Green Party are going to throw the kitchen sink at Bristol West, which means it's more likely than one would expect for them to win it. Of course, the Labour Party will also throw a lot of resources at Bristol West, but not to the same degree as the Green Party, this being their number one target seat, and them not having to worry about Brighton Pavilion as they did in 2015. Finally, I want to talk about the demographics again. I've already touched on this briefly, but this is a point that needs re-emphasising. The Brighton Pavilion and Bristol West seat are remarkably similar, both from historically being conservative to now being dominated by the left, from both being briefly occupied by the Liberal Democrats, from both being dominated by the young, by the students, by largely Remain voters. They are quite remarkable in how similar these two seats are. So I think it's fair to say that the Brighton Pavilion seat is quite a good proxy for the Bristol West seat. And my hypothesis is the only reason that Bristol West isn't currently a Green seat is because they haven't yet built up the momentum. That is to say, we can use Brighton Pavilion to predict the performance of Bristol West. Now, here's the clincher. Every single year since 1997, the Green Party in Brighton Pavilion has increased their vote share by an amount that is greater than the amount that they need this year in Bristol West to win the majority. That is, they would have to have a performance worse, if Brighton Pavilion is a good proxy, than every year, every election since 1997 to not win this seat, if Brighton Pavilion is a good proxy. Now, I think it is a good proxy, and actually demographically, I think there's a good argument to suggest that Bristol West is even slightly slightly more consistent with the young Liberal student type vote that would be more likely to vote Green. So I think this is very good evidence that the only reason they don't have the seat yet is because the momentum and the awareness hasn't built up in the seat. Now you combine that with their ideological superiority, number one, and the fact that the Green Party are going to throw the kitchen sink at this seat, number two, and I think these will dominate over the national vote swings, and I think the Green Party will take Bristol West. It'll be their second seat in the House of Commons. I do not think they will get a third. I do not think they will get Norwich South, but I think they will get two. So that is my conclusion of this episode of polling prediction. Hopefully there will be more episodes to come for the general election, although probably not given how long this video took to make. Thank you for watching.